God, we are wandering in the dark, lost in our own thoughts. We are lost souls and minds. Lost feels like darkness. But then, hope. Hope lights the way. Once we light a candle in a dark room, the room isn't dark anymore. One light makes it easier to light the next one. Hope opens shades and shows us the pathway. Hope lights the way for joy. Joy like a radiant sunrise. Joy that surrounds, that lifts, that remembers. Joy that clears out the pain, the grief, and the stress. Joy like laughter through tears. Joy that throws off the darkness. And joy leaves peace. Peace that surrounds us like a cozy blanket. Peace that soothes our hearts beyond understanding. Peace that opens our eyes and draws us to attention. Peace like floating on a raft before the wave comes. And that wave is love. Love that creates soaring souls. Love that invents and inspires. Love that holds us tight and lets us go. Love exploding with color, emotion, and life. And now, love is here. Love has arrived. Everyone, love has arrived. Emmanuel. God is here.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Bridge. Let's give the Lord a big hand clap. What a better day to be in church. What a better day to celebrate than Christmas Eve here with family. And here we are. We finally arrived at our final Sunday of Advent. What a great journey it's been. I hope that you've been joining us with our devotions every day and our Facebook Live videos and all the great things that have happened. It's been an awesome time. We began our first week in hope. We moved on into peace, which led us to joy. And it all culminates today in love. If Christmas and the coming of Jesus is about anything, it's got to be about love. The most familiar and quoted verse in the entire Bible probably makes that point as clear as anything. It was the scripture that the Morgans read as they lit our Advent candle for love. For God so loved the world that He gave. For God so loved the world that He gave. When you think about it, that's really the reason that tonight or tomorrow or whenever you do your exchanging of gifts, that we give gifts to those that we love. We're acting out and expressing that love that we have for them in the gifts that we give, just like the Father did for us. And as I was getting ready, actually I had a whole message prepared, and this morning God radically changed my message. And I just began to meditate on this whole idea of God so loved the world that He gave. And it hit me that the gifts that we give should be an outward expression of an inward affection. That when we give gifts, that it is an outward, at least it should be an outward expression of an inward affection. Now obviously that's relative to our position in life, the stage that we are in life, but it's true no matter who you are. I'm not just talking about how much money it costs, although that might be a part of it, but how special it is to you. I'll never forget the first Christmas that Chris and I had together, not our first Christmas together, but after we were engaged, our first Christmas after we engaged, I had bought us a home that we were going to live in March when we got married, because our anniversary's in March, and it was the December before that, and I had moved into that home. Now, this home had wheels. It was a mobile home. It cost all of $4,000. It was filled with ants and yucky carpet, but it was still our home. How many of you know when it's yours, it's great? And so I thought, this is our first Christmas in our new home. I wanted to get her something for the home that we were about to move into. So we had been at an antique store, God help us, because I went to things like that, you know, back then. Still do. Anyway, Hobby Lobby, here we come. But so she had, in passing, seen this antique table that she wanted, and it cost a whopping $75. But that $75 equaled a week's pay for me. So it might as well have been $7,500. And so I thought, how am I going to buy this? I could tell she really wanted it. She knew that I couldn't afford it. So what did I do? I went to them and I worked out a layaway plan. And every week for several weeks, actually over the course of several months, I paid on that table until I got it paid off. That was back when layaway was a thing. And I then, when I finally got it paid off, I picked up the table and I brought it to our house, and on Christmas morning, I took her, she didn't stay with me then, just to be clear. I started to say I took her to the house, but I took her to the house because she wasn't at the house. We did not live together before we got married. Let me just make that straight. And so we were close, but we weren't that close. And so Christmas Day, I took her over, and I had a big bow and on the table, and I gave her this table. That $75 present meant the world to her, not because of what it cost, but because of the sacrifice. Because of the effort and the energy and the time that I put into picking out, and the sacrifice financially that I had to make to buy that gift. It's still in our house today, 26, almost 27 years later. That gift is still there. It's survived all of our moves. It survived all of our children, survived all of our children's friends, and all of those things. It's still there. That was a great gift. Now, yesterday, I bought Chris a car for Christmas. So the car did not cost $75. But the sacrifice 27 years ago for a $75 gift was greater than the sacrifice to buy a car yesterday. Why? Because it's relative to the position and the stage of life that you're in. When you're young, you might need to spend a little bit more money for you, not more in comparison to somebody else, for you to express the sacrifice. But as you grow older and have more means, it's not so much about the money, but about the time and the effort and the energy that you spend. It probably meant more to Chris that I had spent a lot of time researching and negotiating and hunting for the vehicle than the price of the vehicle. Are you here? You've all seen the shows or the Hallmark movies. I think every one of them has the rich person who gets their assistant to buy their spouse a gift. Like every Hallmark movie has that, doesn't it? And they, you know, it's not a good thing that they did that. Why? Because they don't even know their spouse. They didn't put time and energy. They just threw money at it. So I'm not talking about just money, but the idea is this: the outward gift should be an expression of an inward affection. That child that spends their allowance to buy their mom something special from the dollar store is an expression of their love to their mom, or that college student who stays up hours making gifts for their family because they ain't got no money, or the parent who works overtime to buy that very special gift for their child that they knew they wanted, or that single mom who, like my mom, who was single, worked overtime and sacrificed herself and didn't get her hair done or bought herself another gift or new clothes or something for herself, and would sacrifice over and over so that my sister and I could have a Christmas at all. Those are all greater true expressions of love than that person who has a lot of money and just throws money at something rather than and filling the tree with expensive things to compensate for the lack of genuine affection and quality time. We've all seen that either in movies or in real life. I'll never forget 28 or so years ago, my niece Tabitha was born, and Chris's youngest sister, her middle sister, is here with her family, sitting right here on the second row. Everybody give them a big hand. It's great to have family with us here today. And their youngest sister, Jamie, was like 10 or 11 years old. And when Tabitha was born, she didn't have money to do anything with, but she made by hand. She knit this thing that had Tabitha's name and the meaning of her name. She put it in a little frame and gave it to my sister. And you know, my sister got some expensive gifts that year. They were doing well. Her and her husband both had great jobs. I'm sure he bought her a great gift. But that year, I'll never forget, the greatest gift she got was from an 11-year-old child. It was a gift that expressed her inward affection in this outward expression of a gift. I'll never forget in Bowie many years ago, revival began to break out, but that revival started with one person giving a drum set to another person. Something that was precious to them, that was meaningful to them. People started giving wedding rings, and they were giving personal items, and people selling wedding gifts and precious dishes and giving them to one another and sowing into one another. And let me just stop right here for a minute. If you have never experienced the joy of that level of sacrificial giving, you should try it. There's no better feeling, and it'll change your life and change you from the inside out. It's really what I believe they experienced in the book of Acts. And as a matter of fact, every major move of God has always been accompanied by some measure of that type of sacrificial giving attached to it. So you could say it this way: the gift should be an adequate expression of the depth of the love that's felt. The gift should be an adequate expression of the depth of the love that's felt. Now remember, it's relative to our position in life, our place in life, where we're at, where we're coming from. So imagine this with me for a moment. God the Father, creator of heaven and earth, the God who flung the stars into the sky, the God who made humanity himself, wants to give his kids a gift. How does the God who is love express love in one single gift to the entire world? Well, as the text said, for God so loved. Let that sink in for a minute. God so loved. How much did he love? He loved so much that he gave. What did he give? He gave himself. He gave his one and only Son. Now think, he's God. He could have given anything. He could have given everything. He makes the rules. He could have said it this way: there's no greater expression of love than Bluebell cookies and cream ice cream. He could have said there's no greater expression of love than silver and gold. He could have said there's no greater expression of love than anything, but he said there's no greater expression of love than a man lay his life down for his friends. So he said the greatest expression of love is to give what's most precious to you, and what's most precious to a father is his son. His one and only son. Why? Because the gift had to be an adequate expression of the depth of the love. We sing about it, we write about it, we speak of it in poetic terms, but when we truly stop and meditate on its reality, it's mind-blowing that God, Emmanuel, God with us, left heaven in the right hand of the Father, and he came to live in this. He came to live in this earth that's so screwed up and messed up with all of our sin and our failure and our hatred and our bitterness and our anger. And he said, I'm going to come. Here's my gift. I'm rolling up my sleeves and I'm moving in among you. And I'm going to display this love, and I'm going to die because of this love to redeem all of this, all of your sin, all of your failure, all of your angerness, all of your bitterness. Why? Because he loves us. See, you could also say it this way. When the love is felt the deepest, the gift should be most precious. When the love is felt the deepest, the gift should be most precious. That's why King David said when he was going to give his gift to build the temple, he said, I will not give God an offering that costs me nothing. It's not just money, but it's that which is most precious to you. Sometimes that involves money, because money is precious to all of us, but sometimes it's even deeper than that. I'll never forget in the 90s, there was a move of God breaking out, and the whole giving thing began to explode in our church in Azle, and people were just giving all kinds of stuff and literally coming to the front night after night, bringing golf clubs and video games and car keys and just precious gifts over and over. I've been privileged to be a part of this kind of a move of God probably 4 or 5 times in my lifetime. And in this time, I had given and given and given, and I had no money left to give. And I had given precious things, and Chris had given precious things, and our kids had given precious things. And one day we were worshiping, and God said, I want you to give your grandfather's rifle. Now, my grandfather was my hero. He was the one of the most significant male figures in my life. My mom's dad. He was a preacher, and he was a pastor, and he was just a great, great man. And when I was younger, he would take me hunting, and he was pretty old, so we didn't get to go do very much, but we would go out in the back and hunt squirrels and rabbits, and then we would come and eat the squirrels and eat the rabbits, and I know that grosses some of you out, but those are great memories. And so this gun was very precious to me. He had given it to his son, who had died in a car accident at 17. And so he had kept it all those years, and he gave it to me, and it was probably one of the most precious possessions I had. And God told me, I want that gun. I said, God, I'll give you the value of the gun. And God said, I don't want your money, I want the gun. And he just kept dealing with me about it, so I knew I had to do it. And so I went and I got it, and in one of the services, I pulled it out, and I brought it to the front. Now, there were Brits in that service. And when I come walking down the aisle carrying a .30-30 rifle, they didn't know what was about to happen. I wouldn't recommend that in today's climate. Come on now, this was a long time ago. It never entered anybody's mind I was going to go crazy and shoot everybody. But this is a different way. And we were in Azle, Texas, in the backside of nowhere. So anyway, it was a different world. I would not suggest doing that today. I was just being obedient to God. And I put it on the altar, and as I set it down, it was the most precious thing I'd ever given God. I walked away and began to weep, and I didn't know what they were going to do with it. I was on staff at the church, but obviously I wasn't going to control what they did with it. So the pastor, Pastor Paul Brownback, some of you know Pastor Paul and Perry Ann, he just decided, what he was going to do. He said, I'll take care of it. So I just assumed he was going to like take it to a pawn shop or something and sell it and get the money and put it in the church. And about 2 or 3 months later, they were having a time that they were going to honor Chris and I, and they were going to send us. We've been serving the church, I think, for 10 years. I had been, and Chris had come along in that process somewhere. And so they were going to send us on a cruise. And at this service, my dad comes, and my mom, my mom and dad had been divorced for years. My dad had remarried. My mom had not yet remarried at that point. But they were both in that service. I had aunts and uncles and cousins that all came, and they were going to celebrate with us. And they gave us some gifts. And one of the gifts, my dad comes walking down that aisle, and he hands me that 30-30. He and my mom had gone together to buy that gun from the church and give it back to me. And my dad said, my dad, who had not served Jesus most of his life, said, the Lord wanted you to have this gun back. He just wanted to see if you would give it up. But because you were willing to give it up, he wants you to keep it. Now, I don't know if you're connecting all the dots, but my mom and dad, who had been divorced, go together to buy a gun to give back to me that I had given to God. That day, I fell on the floor weeping because the joy that came from what that gift meant was astounding. When the love is felt the deepest, the gift should be most precious. That's why I believe this, ladies and gentlemen, that love is the greatest revelation of God to man. Love is the greatest revelation of God to mankind. And that revelation is wrapped up in a gift, and that gift is called Jesus. Jesus is God's gift to the world because the Father loves us so much. And we can learn a lot about the depth of the love of God for humanity by understanding the gift. So let me give you 3 things very quickly about this gift. The Father's gift is perfect because his love is perfect. 1 John 4:18. That the perfect love of God drives out fear. Have you ever had somebody get you a perfect gift? One that was so right and so perfect that it touched you deep in your soul. It was that how did you know moment. Jesus is that gift. You know, it's one of those gifts that when you get it, you can't believe how they knew you so well. Jesus is that gift. Or even greater, have you ever given the perfect gift? You know, the goal, if you give a gift, you want people to cry. If you can just make them cry. For Chris's birthday this year, somebody gave her a gift, and she came squealing from her office, running down into mine, telling me about the gift. And how did the person know? How did she know that I had seen this very thing and I wanted it? It was a big win for that person. Lots of brownie points. You search and search and search, and then you find it. This is it. Think of how the Father felt giving the greatest gift of all. His gift is perfect. It's just what you needed, whether you realize it or not. Next, we see that the Father's gift was not only perfect, but the Father's gift is passionate because his love is passionate. Luke 12:7 says that he knows the hairs on your head. He's so passionate about you. He knows every detail about you, and he knew exactly what you needed. And Jesus is all of that and more. And as we said earlier, John 15:13 says that no greater love has any man than this, that a man lay his life down for his friend. You see today, family, God's love is not passive. It's passionate. God's love is not a passive love. It's a passionate love. That's why at Easter we call the Easter season and the time of the cross the passion of the Christ. Why? Because his passion was displayed in his sacrifice. God doesn't love you a little bit. He doesn't love you with reservation or fear of being hurt. He loves you with everything that he has and everything that he is. As a matter of fact, his love is so passionate, you could call it reckless. You could call it outrageous. Or in the song that we sang earlier, the reckless love of God. Sometimes when you give something so precious, people think you're being reckless. They think that you're not using wisdom. Why would you give something so precious? Chris has given 2 or maybe 3 wedding rings away, and every time it was very significant. And I actually had people come to me and say, "Are you offended that your wife would give away something so precious as a wedding ring? Isn't that a little bit irresponsible? Isn't that a little bit reckless?" And I looked at him and said, "You don't understand the covenant of marriage, because that ring represents a love that is greater than the love between 2 of us, because Jesus is in the middle of that love. So he's what makes that love strong. So if he tells her to give that ring away, there's nothing more responsible than she could do than give that symbol of our covenant away to somebody else, as God's love is instructing her to do." His love is passionate. Let me just read you a few of the lyrics from the chorus and the bridge of the song that we sang called Reckless Love. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. It chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it. I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. It's the overwhelming, never-ending love of God. And the bridge says, there's no shadow you won't light up. No mountain you won't climb up coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down coming after me. That's the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And that love was displayed in the gift. Like the gift, his love was perfect, his love was passionate. And finally, like the song says, it's never-ending, or today we'll say it's permanent. The Father's gift is permanent because his love is permanent. You've all heard of the gift that keeps on giving. Usually it's said in a negative way, but Jesus truly is, in the most positive of sense, the gift that keeps on giving. Nothing can separate us from the never-ending, permanent love of God. Romans 8:35 says, "Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword?" Verse 37 says, "Yet in all these things we are more than conquerors." That's a hooper word, hooper Nikeo, hooper Nike. More than overcomers through him who loved us. Verse 38, "For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord." God's love is perfect. God's love is passionate, and his love is permanent. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter what you've experienced. It doesn't matter the choices that you've made, no matter how good or how bad. Nothing can separate you from the permanent, never-ending, undying, everlasting love of God. This love was so amazing that God had to give it definition. You say, what do you mean? In Greek literature, the word, well, there are several words for love, but one of the words that was used for love is agape. It was the garden variety kind of generic love. It didn't have a lot of significant meaning. So if in Greek, it would have been in Homer's writings and different literature, and if you had read it in that era, it would have just been generically love. It could have meant a lot of different things, like the word we use for love means a lot of different things. I can say I love Mexican food, I love Bluebell, and then turn to my wife and say, I love you, baby, but it better mean something different every time. Come on, are you here? And so this garden variety, agape love, God wanted to give it definition, and he kind of hijacked it, and Jesus displayed it, and then Paul defines it in 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, and he says, let me tell you what agape really is from God's perspective. Agape, or love, is patient. Love is kind and is not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant. Does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own. It is not provoked. It does not take into account a wrong suffered, or keeps no record of wrongs. You could say love carries a shredder. Does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. Bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Or you could say love never falls short. That's agape, and it was personified in Jesus. So you could say it this way: this gift, Jesus is patient, Jesus is kind and not jealous, Jesus does not brag and is not arrogant, he does not act unbecomingly, he does not seek his own or is provoked, Jesus does not take into account a wrong that is suffered, Jesus does not rejoice in righteousness but rejoices with the truth, Jesus bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Jesus never fails. And that's the gift that the Father gave you. You could replace that with the gift from the Father. So we can see, worship team, you can come, the depth of the love of God through the understanding of the gift that he gave. We can understand the depth of the love of the Father from this indescribable, perfect, passionate, permanent gift called Jesus. We saw, I saw an example. I loved thinking back and reminiscing over gifts. Katie, you can start whenever you're ready. You can play. I've been reminiscing this morning, thinking about different gifts. I carry a Bible. I've carried it from our first Christmas together as a married couple. Chris gave me a Bible, and it says, to my loving husband from your loving wife. I've carried that Bible to over 50 nations. And I've written all over it. One day when I die, it'll be a gift to my son. And it'll represent something. I have gifts I want to leave to my kids after I die. One is I have a passport from every decade of ministry. And I want to leave each one of them a decade of my life. But I saw an expression of a gift just yesterday that blew my mind. Cody, our son, who's sitting on the front row, my only begotten son, because I have two daughters who are equally as precious. Just there's two of them, so I can't say only begotten. And I'll hear about all this later, trust me. I had to give equal airtime there, or this is going to be a long Christmas Eve for me. You know, that just is a side note, but how many of you have more than one kid? How many of your kids count presents and the cost of the gifts to determine the love you have for them? Raise your hand. Everybody that have multiple children, raise their hand. Why? Because kids understand the depth of affection and love is expressed in the significance of the gift. Yeah, if you don't think your kids are counting gifts, come sit in at LTS with some of us and you'll hear the story. But Cody and I were just in Kenya, and he loves lions. He loves lions. His football team have almost always been lions. All through high school, he was a lion. I think part of his middle school he was a lion, and then all through high school he was a lion, and then in college playing sports he was a lion. He's so in love with lions, he has a huge one tattooed on his chest. So you know you love lions if you're going to get one tattooed all across your chest. So he loves lions, and we were in Kenya at this market, and I saw this gorgeous paintings of the big five, the big five animals, and lions is one of them. But then Cody spotted this lion, and so he goes to ask the guy, because he wanted to buy this lion for himself to put in his room and remember his first time preaching in Africa. Well, in Kenya. He preached in Africa before, but not in Kenya. And so he wanted to commemorate this, and it was stunning. It's beautiful and captivating, and the eyes and the lion just kind of went into your soul. And so Cody was wanting to buy this, and he went and asked the guy how much you want for it, and the guy said $350 US. We're in an African market. Cody said, "What are you smoking?" He said, I'm sorry, what? And he said, "What are you smoking?" And the guy said, "You want to smoke something?" He said, No. What are you smoking? $350, too much money. And he said, "Oh, you're funny. You're funny." He said, "You're funny, white man. Funny, Mzungu." And he said, "So funny. I smoke nothing. You pay $350. So I can go smoke something." Anyway. So they started talking, and the guy said, he said, "You write down a number." And Cody said, "How much would this cost you in America?" He said, "Have you ever heard of Amazon?" And he said, "No, $10 on Amazon." He said, "Oh, online." No, not $10. He looked at him. He said, "You write down the number you want to give." And Cody wrote down $10 US. And he said, "Now you're smoking something." He said, "You smoke something." And so this takes like an hour. They're doing this dance, you know. And so he comes back, and I said, "I bet you there's no way you can get." So finally, I think the guy came down to like $300. He was not budging. And so Cody just keeps at him. And I mean, we've gone, and people bought stuff, and we're about to leave. And so I said, "I bet you can't do that." He said, "What do you think is the least of that?" I said, "I bet you can't buy that for a certain amount of money." And so it was way less than what the guy wanted, and it would have been reasonable for a hand-painted, beautiful lion that looks into the depths of your soul. And it was a lot of money to Cody. It's like 20% of a week's paycheck. And so he goes and he negotiates, and he's so proud. He comes back. He said, "Dad, I bought the lion. Actually, he left. We got in the van, and the guy, like, as he's getting in the van, chased him down and said, 'I hate you, but pay me.'" So they struck up this friendship. So he buys the lion. So he comes home, and he's so proud of it. He shows it to his mom, and he's going to get it framed and all this. And then we do Christmas with Alex and Danielle every year, and their kids, and so we've been doing that for 10 years, I guess. And so we had breakfast, and they came over. We cooked breakfast, and we were having our Vasquez white family. That's not a racial slur. Our last name's White, and so we had our family breakfast together, and I cook homemade biscuits and gravy, and it's great. And I'm just throwing that out there, you know, because you didn't know I had those skills. But anyway. And so we're exchanging our gifts, and all of a sudden Cody goes and hands Alex a gift. And it was rolled up, and I thought, "Oh, I wonder what that is." And I was joking. I said, "He gave you a scroll from the Dead Sea." And he opens it up, and it's that lion. And I snapped him, and I said, "Is that your lion, or did you buy two lions? Did you get two for one and didn't tell me?" He said, "No, that's my lion." And I said, "You gave him your lion?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Wow, that's amazing." He said, "There are 2 or 3 things, and I'm done. We're going to have communion. We'll go eat. You can get to the buffet for the Baptists." Yeah, it's too late. You can't make it. So I got 5 more minutes then. Get to the buffet after the Baptists are cleared out. But there's 2 or 3 things I learned, Freddie, from that. First thing he said was, I just love him so much. How could I give him nothing? That'll preach. Then he said, they always give me such good gifts. He said, ever since I was little, they've given him computers, and they just recently helped him get a new computer, they're just always giving him great gifts. And he said, I just didn't want to give him some little something. Now here's the reality. Alex and Danielle could buy something way more expensive, but they couldn't buy anything more precious. And I think that as we understand the depth of the love of the Father to give us the gift of Jesus, the response is we want to give back. We want to give to the world around us. We want to pay it forward. We want to make a difference. And sometimes people say, I think there's times people think, well, I don't tithe, or I don't give, or I don't sow a seed, or I don't give because my little amount to the building won't matter, or my little amount to God won't matter. It wasn't about what they needed. It was about what he wanted to display from the depth of the affection that was in his heart. So do you know the Father takes every gift we ever give him, and he keeps it forever as a memorial because it's so precious to him. The third thing he said that struck me so deep, and this morning I just began to weep at this revelation. He texted me back and he said, I hope they love it as much as I do. This morning, as I was sitting at my desk, and I was just thinking of the indescribable gift of the Father. The love that God showed and displayed in giving Jesus, his Son, his only Son. It's like when he sent him, I could almost hear the Father say, I hope they love him as much as I do. But the reality is, Miss Maudie knew we wouldn't. He knew we couldn't. But he gave that gift anyway, knowing that we could never love Jesus like he loves Jesus. But that's how much he loved us. And it wasn't based on our ability to respond. It wasn't based on our ability to comprehend. It wasn't based on our ability to be good or do good or act good. It was reckless. It was outrageous. It was extravagant. It was God.